Welcome, Nick, to your performance review.
So, Nick, how do you think it's been going so far?
Yeah,
Well,
what's
I
been
think I've done
going
pretty well.
well?
Okay, good. I'm
Can
glad that you
I?
feel that way.
I'm gonna list here. Barbara and accounts gave me some. uh,
Yeah, I did.
like,
I did a sketch on TikTok, which got a lot of traction. Funny thing with TikTok, people talk about the secret to going viral. I don't think there is a secret. I've learned a couple of things through putting lots of effort into it and seeing very little return, which is, firstly, you've got to try all kinds of different things. You just try different things, and you won't always know which is going to appeal to your audience, and they will kind of tell you. And then the thing is just kind of relentlessness, pushing out,
mm,
keeping going. Don't think there beyond that. I don't think there's a trick, but it's also rather disappointing because I continue to do a variety of stuff. But what I've realized is that the algorithm or the audience narrows you into the shape they want you to be. So the thing that gets most traction, the thing that people most like me to do, is these kind of parody corporate pieces where I kind of paradise, if that's even a word, what corporate life is like. Anyway, long story short, I do these like things I miss from corporate, and I did one on performance reviews where some sort of stuffed shirt just says, "Oh, welcome to your performance review. You had a great year, so I'm going to mark you as meets expectations."
that's
And then it's like,
three.
yeah, three. No, three is good. Three, no, the three is good, good score. Yeah, we expect you to exceed your expectations. So don't take it the wrong way. Anyway, so yeah, that got quite a lot of traction. It's just interesting that there's that constant pressure when you're out there to be shaped. And I think that's true as a business as well. I don't know if you found this, but your customers will tend to define you. And sometimes that's a good thing, but sometimes it kind of pushes you in a direction away from what you really wanted, you thought you were there to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've had a similar reflection on LinkedIn recently. As we've discussed this, but the most popular thing to say is the thing that everyone's been saying for a while, and so the people that seem to get the most traction on LinkedIn, the people saying the same stuff over and over again. I just don't have the tolerance for it. I don't have the patience for it. So, because I always want to say, I always want to say something new. I was like, oh, I said that last week. I don't want to say that again. But like the people who seem to be most successful are like just basically saying the same thing over and over again in slightly different formats. And I just so boring. And they
Yeah.
must find it boring too, I guess.
Yeah, there's something slightly pathological about it, isn't it? It's just kind of watching the same episode of a TV show over and over again because you know exactly how it goes. And it gives you that sort of sense of comfort.
Yeah. So I've
Anyway,
started to
I've
hate
drifted
LinkedIn
off.
now.
You wanted to give me some feedback, I think. Sorry.
No, I was just being funny. I don't
How
have
do
any
you think it's
feedback.
going so far?
Yeah, I mean, I just enjoy having the conversation, so I don't really care about anything else, I think.
Do you look at the
Um,
data?
no, well, I looked at it twice. So once my marketing person looked at it, and then I looked at it a couple of months ago to have
It's
a
so
look to
depressing
see.
that you never went back.
Well, I don't. I mean, there's like a few hundred people listening or have listened, so I think that's okay. I mean, it was always there's always like the sort of businessy side of me, which is like, why am I doing anything that doesn't directly impact my bottom line?
Yeah,
Why am I spending an hour and the rest to edit and upload if
that's
it's not
death.
making me more money?
That line of thinking is absolute death.
Yeah.
In
Well, that's
so
why
many
I'm just carrying
contexts.
on anyway. Yeah.
Well, just because it sounds like a sweeping statement. You become a slave to the commercials then, really, and what that will do
Mm,
is it will narrow your focus around whatever is saleable, which in one
mm,
sense, can be quite successful as commercial strategy, but it's death in the sense that your business is then going nowhere, and intellectually, I think you're just kind of going nowhere. So, I have quite a strong kind
mm.
of reaction against it. You've got to do something at the fringes, even if you do still have to make money in the middle. You know what I mean?
What are you doing at the fringes? Is this the fringiest thing that you're doing at the moment, or?
All kinds of things. It depends. I think a lot of the time your work, your intellectual life is informed by kind of, other stuff that you're doing. And so I think you've got to keep quite active and quite venturous, I think, in what you do. So yeah, all the usual stuff. I ran a 5DI workshop in London, which I've done a few times, nothing special, but there were lots of really enthusiastic and engaged L&D people there. It's not a plug for the workshops, but I always learn a lot from people when I do that. And there were just some really great conversations on the day. And we had a lot of fun. I spoke at the CRF as well. I cut ties. So I was thinking, I'm getting a bit tired of throwing marshmallows at people.
Mm.
And so what I did was I did this thing where I secretly handed out ties to 3 men before the session began. And I said, can you just wear these and all will become clear? And then at the beginning of the session, I said, look, I'm going to need 3 guys with ties to join me up on stage, you, and you. So I got them up on stage and they stood there looking a bit confused. And I said, right, I need now 3 ladies, with or without ties. And then I had the ladies standing facing the guys and I handed them all scissors. And I said, I want you to cut the ties off the guys. Brilliant. I'd never done it before. So I suddenly had this panic moment before because I thought, in my mind, this works.
Mm.
It's a little experience design. You know why I do these things. It's to illustrate the point that the only memorable thing is the thing that has an emotional reaction. And sometimes I throw marshmallows, but as I say, getting bored of that. So I thought, well, anything could happen. It's a really interesting experiment into human nature, right? Because they could just refuse. They could say no. Why would I do that? That's rude. That's potentially it's assault or something, or it's a criminal offence. You couldn't do that and go up to somebody. Actually, this one lady just snipped right through it. Almost as soon as the words got out of my mouth, she was like, there goes the tie. And then the others saw what she did and followed suit. And I thought I was going to have to do a lot of coaxing and cajoling and be like, this is going to be fine. Trust me, I will bear the consequences. Nope, they just went for it. Great, good for them. And then there were 3 slightly bewildered-looking guys with ties cut off. One lady did something extraordinary. She cut the tie up the middle. It's just such a weird thing to do. What you might think, well, what's weird about that is like it just made the whole personal engagement so much longer.
Just
Do you know what I mean?
longer.
It was like right, it was almost, it became quite personal,
God.
and yeah, I was impressed by that. And then I was able to obviously debrief and say, look, it's all part of, when you think about experience design, you have to think about things that depart from the script. So that was fun. Yesterday, I was in central London. My wife was getting a tattoo. I had a meeting with an important client to talk about portals and resources, which I love because I think you can have so much impact with those. I've done a lot of that kind of work. It was with salespeople. I found a cafe. I checked the Wi-Fi. Everything was fine. I found a quiet corner. The music wasn't too loud. I was like, yes, digital nomad. The meeting was at 4. The cafe, somebody wandered up to me at 4:15 and said, we close at 4:30. Unbelievable. So I had to sit outside this cafe and there was literally a helicopter hovering overhead. You could not make this stuff up. And there were police cars and ambulances going up and down like they were just trying to ruin my meeting. And then I thought, wow, actually, this isn't even a particularly safe part of London. Is it really sensible to be sitting here with a laptop, a webcam, all these paraphernalia? And so that was an unsettling experience for me.
Where were you in London?
It was a place called Parliament Tattoo. I'd have to figure it out, but it was as I walked to the cafe, there was a church with a box that said "weapons drop."
Oh yeah,
You deposit your weapons safely in this box, and that was what made me think this wasn't necessarily a very safe part of London because I'm not used to it. Do you have one round your way, like a
weapons box.
drop? Yeah.
No, not that I've seen. But I don't
Right.
go to churches, so I didn't see it. Is it called
Okay.
Parliament Church?
Parliament Tattoo.
Tattoo.
Yeah.
Look, where are we in London? Okay, North London, near Finsbury Park. Yeah, Finsbury Park is interesting spot.
Interesting. Yeah.
Particularly by the actual the railway station. There, it's a bit rough.
Okay. Okay. So it's not just my, prejudice is surfacing. All right.
No, it's a bit edgy. I mean, Crouch
Yeah.
Hill's all right. I used to live
All
down
right.
in just down the road in Angel. But anyway, I mean, it's north of Highbury. Well, that sounds good.
How about you?
Well, I'm just fully immersed in being a parent, really. Everything I do that's new generally is. I took my daughter ice skating yesterday, for example. I've been
How
ice
did that
skating
go?
for ages. Firstly, I got there and she was like, actually, I don't want to do ice skating after all. And she's been talking about this forever and she's never done it. So I was like, oh, brilliant. I've come all this way to Alexandra Palace and now she's not even going to go on the ice. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to force it. So I sat with her for a bit and she watched a few people go around and she saw some proper good skaters. And then eventually she was like, okay, I think I can get my skates on now. So I took her to get her skates and then put my skates on and realized that I couldn't really ice skate either. I was gonna do it. So sort of hobbled onto the ice. And nearly fell over a few times and sort of put her between my legs and sort of walked around holding her arms. And after, probably, well, we were there for 90 minutes. After an hour, we were actually going around at a bit of a speed and she was managing to balance a bit more. So yeah, it was a good, and then she didn't want to get off the ice. So it was a massive success from that perspective because especially at that age, I feel like you can overface them, and it puts them off doing other things. Like I want to get her skiing at some point and I don't want her to have a bad
Mm.
memory of that and then pass it on to skiing. So
That's
yeah,
very
that was
interesting, though.
good.
There often is like that initial emotional reaction to a new, setting.
Mm,
And I think you did, obviously you did the right thing, but just letting her kind of sit with that up until the point where that initial feeling had kind of settled, rather than just turning
mm,
around and saying, right, well, we're off. It's probably a pivotal point in somebody's development,
mm.
in that they if they back down at that point, they never get on the horse. Whereas if they just sit and watch people, riding around, eventually they're like,
Mm.
maybe I'll give it a go.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Socially, she's very capable, but physically, she's less capable or less confident. So I'm just trying to build that in a little bit. But there's other things like, I mean, I'm reading a book about time perception at the
Hmm.
moment because I'm interested in things like why time seems to pass faster when you're older
Yeah.
and what I could do to potentially slow it down. I'm only in chapter two, but I've learned things like ADHD people see time as um, faster than it is. So apparently there's an experiment that they ran where about 70%, but it's about 70% accurate that if you ask an ADHD person to guess a minute, they'll generally say it's slower. I
Interesting.
thought was interesting. Also things like how hot you are, like how warm your body is, how anxious you feel, those things also slow time down.
There
But
is some
my,
research on this. Yeah,
yeah,
I know quite a lot about this, and I'll try not to
yeah,
be boring about it. Philosophically, there's Martin Heidegger's one of my favorite works, Being and Time. He says that basically time is a product of anxiety, of concern, which sounds weird and philosophical, but in essence, he's saying it's like a system two, a frontal cortex thing, which is that you're projecting into the future about what's going to happen, and that creates this sense of time. And so there's some evidential support for this, which is it kind of collapses if you're very excited or immersed in something. So this is why sometimes people say, oh, the time just flew by, because if you achieve this kind of flow state, Csikszentmihalyi talks about this, then you lose track of time because you're no longer projecting in different directions about, oh, what if, you're just fully immersed in the moment, which is probably how animals experience time, coincidentally. But here's the question that I've still got, and I can't bottom it out. Physics is saying that time is an illusion, that as far as our best physical theories can tell us, if you like, everything is happening simultaneously. It's just like the universe is sort of static in a sense. Time is some sort of mental projection. So I think I vaguely kind of get that, and
mm,
it sits with the Heidegger stuff. But here's the problem I've got, and maybe you know the answer, maybe somebody out there knows the answer. If time is a consequence of mental projection, and in some meaningful sense in the universe, all the events are kind of static, they're all just there. Why is it you can go forwards and not backwards? And I can't bottom that out. Why is it that you can only go in one direction? You mentally you can move forwards, but what you can't do is reposition yourself backwards. I just don't know the answer to that. I can't figure out why that's the case.
well, I don't know the answer, but I've got a theory of life based on
Yeah.
that, which is I wonder that if time is a mental projection, um, whether when you die you basically just start again, because if essentially if your brain is picking up time from the moment that it becomes linear in your head, does that mean that when you're dead you just basically repeat over and over again,
I love
which
that.
is great
I've
for
obviously
some people.
totally corrupted this podcast. I realize that as you're talking, is that it's complete. Somehow I've wrangled it so that we get into
Basically,
talking
we
about
just
these
need to
deep
smoke some
philosophical
ganja and
topics.
talk
Like,
about toast.
because yeah, it's like this is my home territory. Wonderful. What a
Yeah.
coincidence. Because this is Nietzsche, eternal recurrence, and there's a whole.
Mm.
Who was it? One of the. Was it Aristotle or Socrates said, "Don't worry about dying because you can't be dead," which is sort of literally true. There's no such thing as being dead, and this is parodied in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, where one of them is saying, "I'm really worried about being dead," and Guildenstern's like, "What? Like what? Like being dead in a box?" And they're like, "Yeah, I don't want to be dead in a box under the ground." He's like, "Well, you won't know you're dead in a box under the ground. There's no such thing as being dead in a box under the ground." He's like, "Yeah, but," so it goes on like this. But the point, yeah, Nietzsche's argument is the eternal recurrence, which is you just repeat your life infinitely exactly the same way. So this life that you're living now, I've lived now, we live,
Mm.
it's like a record. You
Yeah.
it goes back to the beginning, which sort of makes sense because however much time passes in between this instantiation of Charlie Kneen and the next one, you won't be aware of it. So kind of he describes it as the greatest weight, which is either kind of horrifying or reassuring.
It's very reassuring for someone who's lived as blessed a life as I have that I'm going to
Yeah.
get another go. But I'm sure for other people, it's horrifying.
Yeah.
How would you rate your recurrence out of 10?
Is that like how would I rate my life? Would I want to live it
Mm.
again? Which is
Yeah.
what Nietzsche says, are you living a life such it? Yeah, I think I've been hugely, hugely fortunate, both in kind of the obvious sense, just demographically, to be born into, the society at a time that I have. But also I've just had so many extraordinary adventures and done so many exciting things. And so yeah, I'm super happy with it. I see
Good.
I see the flip side as well. I've
Mm.
seen I saw a TikTok from a guy yesterday in his 50s saying he's in his 50s and it just feels like he's become invisible. And I think I hear this also from women that beyond a certain
Mm.
age you feel like you've become invisible. And I think it is quite easy to be fast tracked to a point where you've just gone through the motions and done what's expected, and you don't really
Mm.
feel that you have a presence in the world. And I don't feel that way, and I'm so glad I don't.
Mm. But when we were talking about this before, it was Ben was saying he doesn't want to have any adrenaline at his age. He wants to eat crisps in the garden. There is a tendency, I think, to want to be more comfortable and as I get older and be less challenged by stuff. I don't know. I've always got my love of physical activity, I suppose, at least for now. That I'm always up for going mountain biking or going sea swimming or doing something a bit unusual I've not done before in that sense. That's the stuff I get most enjoyment out of, really. But yeah, I think as you say, can't really complain much with what we've got, what we've been born into. And this is going to become an incredibly painful podcast for people to listen to. Two middle-aged white guys talking about how great life is.
Awesome. We've hit
Fucking hell.
our target
Yeah,
demographic.
this
I
is
like, you know the
terrible.
Dylan Thomas poem, "Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage against the dying of the light." That's more my philosophy. And I think that my observation has been, do you know, just from a psychological standpoint, so I'm going to inject a little bit of science into this. Your most intense memories during the course of your life are from your teenage years. And I
Mm,
think that's because from the perspective of kind of hormones, those are kind of peaking, and that has an effect on your experience of emotion. And people will know that teenagers have a lot of kind of uncontrolled emotional feelings, and you're encountering a lot of things for the first time, kind of relationships and all manner of things. And so you have very intense memories. And I think my worry is as you get older, you can very easily descend into eating crisps in the back garden because it takes a lot more to kind of really shock you or surprise you because you've just seen so much. And so I guess that I am almost anticipating having to do more and more kind of extreme
mm.
things as I get
Yeah.
older in order to just continue to feel alive.
So what you're going to end up with is like social media junkie influencers doing more and more extreme things. And at the other end of the promenade, you've got a load of really old people doing the same, being more and more extreme.
Yeah,
So
I think
yeah,
that's a good second. You know what? I love this. So because that's why social media is becoming problematic because it's an attention grabbing mechanism, and people constantly adjust the bar upwards, and it's taking more and more extreme things to get people's attention. But look, here's what I was working my way towards. There's two Dutch guys, and I guess they've gone viral, and I absolutely love it. And I'm going to see if I can find the link to them. What they're doing is they set themselves a series of challenges over 20 days to do a bunch of things, like they get eyelash extensions, they get their nails done, they walk in high heels, and it's just, I can't understand a word of it because they're talking in Dutch. Doesn't matter. It's absolutely hilarious. They have micro needling done, and I'm not entirely sure what the point is, but it is just the funniest thing I've seen in a while. And what I like about it is they've set themselves these series of challenges, and they're just kind of laughing at each other as they go on these adventures. So yeah, that is a good example. Good
is the
use
is
of
isn't
your
the point
adulthood.
isn't the point that uh they're experiencing what life is like to be a woman and how horrible and painful it is from that
Think
perspective.
that might be a part of it, yes.
Yeah,
But I mean, I'm not sure about the spray tan though. They had a spray tan.
no, fair
That's
enough.
not, let me see if I can find them. Yeah. Oh, wait, I can't see where they are. Oh, I'll track them down eventually. But yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
What have you seen that's good recently?
Well, I've deleted TikTok and I've deleted YouTube. Um, I just kind of find myself doom scrolling, and actually, for the 15 minutes that I've got when the kids are watching telly or something in the evening, I'd rather be sat opposite them reading a book, sort of
Yeah.
demonstrating that behavior. So I'm trying to read more really, which I think might be, again, it might be a sign of old age. I just I'm finding myself looking forward to sitting down with a book.
Hmm.
So that's been quite nice, and it all came from me stopping drinking in January. I had a bit more focus and a bit more time, not being hungover to do stuff like that. So I think that has been good. I've recently watched June 2, um,
Yeah.
part 2, which I thought was all right. I like the book, so um,
What did you think to it?
well, I was chatting to my brother-in-law about this because we have quite good film-based conversations, and he said that that particular director generally is a bit more style over substance. So I think visually epic. The script I think is a bit woolly in places. Some of the character arcs are a bit nothing. So yeah, it's good.
Mm.
It's all right.
Did you
Worth
see
a watch.
Did you see the original one, the
I
first June
did.
movie?
Yeah, it's got that actor that's like only ever in like comedies. Oh, he's in that new thing, Fallout. He's the dad in the Fallout. Have you seen that?
I haven't. No.
Oh, Fallout. You will like Fallout. It's kind of have you ever played BioShock?
I grew up. Fallout was my bread and butter, and the
Oh,
problem
really?
was that I fell in love and spent so many hours playing Fallout. I identified with that, I think, game series so strongly that when I started watching the series,
Hmm.
I couldn't continue because it wasn't. I guess other
Wasn't
people
that
have had
your
this.
experience of it?
It wasn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
it didn't match the experience. It was sort of storyfied in a way, which is weird. But yeah, I think
Hmm.
Fallout was quite transformative for me, as was The Witcher. Also, um, what else? World of Warcraft. That was a big deal for me as
And
well.
Morton's quite into World of Warcraft. Morton and
Mm.
Sumi play it together. Have you
Yeah,
ever played World of Warcraft as a couple?
yeah. I played at some point. I played with my daughter, and so
Oh yeah.
she would join, and we'd go on these little adventures together. And so, yeah, I think this, and I was at the BBC at the time. It was Siemens, the BBC. So I was introduced to it there was a Polish guy who actually came to my wedding called Slavomir, and he was playing it. And it was a weird experience. Stop me if I've told this story before, but I used to just kind of laugh at it because I remember he came into work on Monday morning and I said, how was the weekend? And he said, yeah, it was amazing. He said, got together with some friends. We found this little village. And he said, we just completely raided it. We burned it to the ground. And we looted it. And it was fantastic. We had a great time. And I was like, what are you talking about? And it took me a while to realize he was talking about what he does in World of Warcraft. And I realized that he had relocated in an existential sense. So his primary life was now in World of Warcraft, and every so often he would dip out of his life and do stuff in the real world, just to make some money and stuff like this. That was really interesting. So I thought I should try it out. And I think obviously these environments, game environments, are engineered to give you a lot of the sorts of things that you don't get in real life, like a sense of progress or a sense of status.
Mm,
A simple ladder that you can climb, you can all this kind of stuff. So they're very addictive, and so I think more and more people, and the reason I'm talking about this is I think it's a huge trend now is that people are basically relocating. Much as they might kind of move to Spain, they're moving into the digital world where you can have whatever identity you want and you can progress in a way which is kind of very satisfying and live in a way which kind of expresses what you feel is kind of your true self. And
mm.
so, yeah, I think that was my first encounter with not just the digital world, but the idea that that your primary being, you would dwell in the digital world, I think.
I can't do that anymore. I've tried. I used to get into computer games and play them for hours and hours and hours, but I can't get into games like I used to, blocking me from doing that. Maybe it's just time. Maybe if I spent 20 hours non-stop playing a particular game, I'd feel that immersed, but I don't know, my attention's elsewhere. I also don't like playing with other people. I find it really awkward. Like I was playing VR with there's a game called Onward, which is like a special ops kind of shoot 'em up thing, but in VR, which is quite, quite exciting. But I just turned off all the chat because I can't deal with random weirdos just bullying each other all the time, basically. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
I can.
can you deal with that? I just can't. It just feels alien to me, basically.
Yeah, you're right. Same with me. And I think if you've got kids, I know Kenny Tomowo still
Mm,
games and he's got kids. I think it's a
yeah.
difficult balance to strike because the games are engineered to be addictive. And so, I think that's somehow you've got to kind of strike a balance. I don't play games like that at all. I have a little game on my mobile where I'm like developing these little characters, but all of that Call of Duty stuff, like yelling at
Mm,
each other, and it just has absolutely no appeal to me whatsoever. And that's why I never really got into games like kind of Fortnite and all that sort of thing.
mm,
But clearly, it does to some people. But no, I'll play a little game on my mobile, and I realise it's self-medication. That's what I'm doing. It's because I get overwhelmed sometimes with kind of all these things that I'm thinking about, and it's time. A little bit back to your point, it just focuses your
mm.
mind in on something, and for those seconds, you can just forget about invoicing, or whatever it is. And so yeah. Or alcohol
How
does
is
the same thing, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah, yeah, that ends the focus a little bit. How is um how is work and business at the moment?
Yes, good. I think I have a portfolio of stuff which seems to work for me commercially. So sometimes it's like a pyramid. So sometimes I'm doing stuff at the top of the pyramid, which is speaking engagements. Got quite a few of those. Um, and I'm constantly thinking of new and exciting ways to entertain people. So I did one for Financial Ombudsman Service, where I did
Hmm.
a kind of dramatic retelling of Shackleton's story, because their theme was sort of leading through change, and so it is a beautiful illustration of how to deal with the unexpected. And so that was interesting to do. And then I'm running 5 day workshops. Won't you know promote those anymore than I have done already. And then the bottom of the pyramid is the really chunky work that I like, doing leadership development stuff. And so got a couple of projects along those lines, which is just fantastic because it gives me an opportunity to do, because I think otherwise if a consultant, if you're just like somebody who's rabbiting on about stuff, somebody might think, oh crikey, we're so tired of listening to Nick blab on about this, that, the other. But it needs to remain grounded in real life and real business challenges. So those sorts of projects where you're talking to real leaders about the real problems they face across a variety of industry sectors, I think help you to remain connected to what's really happening in the world of work. So
Mm,
I like those. And they also give you a bit more scope to do things as well.
mm.
How about you?
As well, before I answer that question, have you've changed from marshmallows to cutting ties, but it's essentially the core of the speaking engagement presentation thing you do, a variation of the one that I've seen multiple times, I suppose. Um, and then that's no, sorry, that sounds really bad. No disrespect about your very good presentation. I just wonder how it's evolved basically over time.
Yeah, I think there's some core things. I think that part of the problem is that it's two things. Most of what I do is two things. It's the deep philosophical stuff, and then it's the practical stuff that grows out of that. And it's been a very interesting experience for me in my career, both in terms of, say, the book, How People Learn. So I'll give you an analogy which might bring it to life. Charles Darwin is on a podcast, and so the podcaster says to Charlie, "So yeah, I saw your book out. Great." He said, "I just love all the pigeon breeding stuff. You know, and I know we've got a lot of pigeon breeders out there. So, tell us about it, Charlie. How do you breed a good pigeon?" And it's like that often is sort of the feeling that I have is the whole thrust of what I'm trying to do is around the effective context model. Almost nobody talks about that. And in the presentations that I do, I've learned to kind of skirt over it quite rapidly. But it is a radical, revolutionary reimagining of human nature, really. And I would argue it is ultimately the bottoming out of human nature. But actually, generally, most of my talk is about, how to design, better learning programs, which is good and is a consequence of understanding human nature, right? If you understood human nature, you could do that. So I talk about experiences and whatever. And so to answer your question, it's always evolving because I hope that I will continue to evolve. And it reflects that. And I'm always trying to improve it. But you're right. I'm still there doing, say, some of, because the funny thing, to a true story, I was looking back at previous presentations and I was kind of horrified that some of the things that I was presenting sort of 10 years ago were there in those slide decks, from way back then. But it has also sort of changed a bit. So yeah.
What's been the biggest addition, let's say, to your thinking in the last 10 years, would you say?
That's a great question. I think one of the big things that happened was I did courses, resources, not courses. And I sort of learned that you need that bumper sticker effect to get traction in the market. Some people will still know me as the courses, not resources guy. But I think that a corner I had to turn was really impressing on people the importance that resources are really learning elimination. That's why they're effective. That's the essence of why they're powerful. And actually stressing more the importance of the experience and designing experiences. That's why CTR, concern, task, resource, that matrix went from being CTR to CTRE, because I realized you have to talk about the experiences as well. So I think that was quite important. Otherwise, in the last 10 years, I'm not sure, actually. I'd have to have a think about it. What do you think, Charlie? How has your thinking changed in the last 10 years?
Yeah, well, yeah, I was thinking about because you got CTRE, we do CCS. So this means nothing to most
Yeah.
people, but we do concern, challenge, and solution, so that the solution can be anything.
Yeah.
And I think the limitations of courses and resources is actually a lot of the time the solution to the problem is not a resource or an experience. If the problem is deeper, like it's a cultural
Yeah.
shift. So how we've evolved is probably more going into more kind of OD in a way. And often do we get kind of pigeonholed into L&D, but we always try and make the point that you can roll out this leadership program, but it's going to make no difference whatsoever unless you change these critical kind of things within the business, like your performance management, how you're approaching, how you're measuring, and essentially giving people objectives in the business. How your senior leaders communicating with people, those kind of things. And that's kind of the stuff I'm interested in. I guess it's like will to power. I want the power to be able to shape the whole business for the better, rather than just being like, oh, you just do the learning bit, go and do that over there. So I think it's been helpful to be running a business, because I think it gives you that consciousness of how these kind of different parts of a business fit together to essentially generate money. So I think that's been quite revelationary for me personally, because before, I think Morton left, I was very much just a consultant guy who could do cool stuff. But now I have a sort of more strategic. I mean, I know we kind of poo-pooed strategy a little bit in previous podcasts, but I think I have a more holistic lens. Guys, it's very corporate wanky, isn't it? But
Well,
hopefully that makes sense.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I think that trying to solve problems, I think it's probably where the intersection is. You will uncover things which lie outside of the remit of L&D. So the same is true if if you run the CTRE process. I run induction design projects. And one of the things that you typically find is that if the IT procurement is broken, then there's only so much you can do
Mm,
with the quote, the learning and performance support experience. And it's like that then becomes something that's out of scope. And I like
mm,
what you're saying, which is that what I do is I identify those things that are out of scope and say, now look, if we're really going to improve this, these are the other things you're going to have to fix. And what you're doing, which goes beyond what I do, is you're saying, well, and we can fix these. And I think the challenge for that is you're a learning person trying to climb out of the learning bucket. Because it's like, well, no, if I really wanted to fix these organizational problems, I wouldn't hire, an L&D team. I'd hire, I don't know, McKinsey or something who do organization transformation, all this kind of business process re-engineering. It's like, what do
what
you
does
do?
that
Do you do
even
business
mean?
process re-engineering? It's like, have you got any certifications in business process? And I'd be like, well, no, I'm just a learning guy, but I think we can fix problems. So I think that I envy you the courage, I think, and the ambition to actually kind of climb out of the learning bucket into that space.
But I
Um,
think a lot of the time it's not about needing to know. It's not, I mean, it's the same with any kind of product or service design is you don't need to be the expert in the thing, but you need to be able to facilitate progress. And I guess that's what consultants are good at, right? They get stuff done.
yeah,
So if you spot a problem, which is the IT is scuppered, most of the time IT probably know it's scuppered and they probably want to fix it, but for various reasons they don't have the resource or the time to focus on it. So if you're able to make that more important and facilitate the progress or conversation at least, then I think L&D can have
yeah,
a more strategic impact on the business. But yeah, you have to be, I guess, public schoolboy arrogant to think you can
yeah.
achieve it.
You nailed it. That's where we get it. I also can answer your question. What's changed in my thinking? I think I realize I spend a lot of time thinking about AI at the moment, kind of
Mm,
the implications of it and the consequence of it and how it fits with 5DI and what you can do with it, what you can't do with it, what you should do, what you shouldn't do with it, what the future is going to look like with AI. So I think that's had quite an impact, I guess, on
mm,
many people's thinking.
mm. I was thinking about this. Well, I was watching Rory Sutherland. I did download YouTube earlier. I was watching your Rory Sutherland talk about the this 2026 trends, and it's for the Drum, which is a marketing publication, and he was talking about the doorman fallacy, which is uh, you have a doorman in front of a hotel, and a consultant comes in and goes, well, we can save the money by making the doors automatic, and then you get rid of head count and make it more productive, more efficient, more money. Um, but you remove a lot of the intangibles of having a doorman, like they're there to greet you as you walk in. There's no one, there's no homeless people who end up parking up outside your hotel because there's no one there to kind of oversee that area and stuff like that. He also, related it to the self-service checkouts, which have become like the only option for paying in some places, but obviously for people who have two children and trying to cart around two kids and push a trolley at the same time, it basically makes it impossible to shop. And I see that with AI to some extent is the the consultant focus is let's use it to save money and be more productive, but you're missing some of that quality of not just quality of like what you're doing as a business, but like the experience of being employed and all that good stuff. So I'm
I
very
think
worried about all of that.
I think Rory's completely wrong, like 180 degrees wrong on that. He hasn't. I
Mm.
don't think he's understood really how threatening AI is. So the reality. Do you remember
To
at
be fair,
PA
to
Consulting?
Rory, that wasn't necessarily about AI. That was
Yeah.
more about the drive to productivity. Yeah, yeah.
So I think there's something in there, but I don't think it's what it seems to be. So I remember going into PA, I guess the PA consulting office in central London. They used to have somebody on the front desk who would greet you in the morning and
Standing at
smile and say,
attention.
how
Yeah.
you doing? Whatever. And then they replaced it. I don't know. We moved buildings or something, and somebody else, a third party contractor, you know, um, and it was just a bloke who stared at his phone as people walked in. And if somebody had a problem with the barriers, he would get up. And that really hit me as a shift in the experience. So you just got
Mm,
some, millennial back then just kind of staring at his phone while people who came into the office. So your doorman, your AI doorman, let's say, is so much better at the personal stuff because the AI doorman says, "Hey, Charlie, good to see
mm.
you again. Yeah, it's
Don't
been a
forget,
few
you're at
days.
9 o'clock. Your coffee's on your desk.
No, even better than that. By the way, Caught your podcast the other day. Loved that bit that you said about this. You know, because it knows everything, it sees everything, and it's like
Yeah.
this is not fantasy sort of science fiction. It's rapidly becoming a reality. I keep reminding people of this stat that the number one use in 2025 for ChatGPT was companionship. People, it is hyper personalized. It is going to give you and hyper. I saw somebody on LinkedIn saying, "Can we stop saying hyper?" I think it's Miles, but it's hyper personalized in the sense that it will be more personalized than any human being could ever be. It will have listened to all your podcasts. It will know exactly what you care about. It will know the nicest thing to say to you when it sees you in the morning, as will your chat companion. I think this is going to
Mm.
be a very world transforming experience for people. But you're always right in the sense that something is missing, and I think the thing that's missing is not that, is the friction. It's that, and I've ended up talking about this and blogging about this, is that you grow and you develop through friction. Real people aren't always nice to you. Real people miss things about you, and you might think, well, what's the value of that? Well, it teaches you to adapt. And I think that's my real worry, is that as we create this kind of frictionless environment where you're surrounded by artificial people who love you and listen to everything you
Mm.
say, that we're kind of removing that thing that makes people grow and develop.
Mm.
I did land an L&D point in this podcast.
Yeah. But what about, because I've been thinking about a client of mine said, oh, there's this company that has an AI tool that will allow you to do AI coaching practice. And in fairness, I haven't really sat down and tried it because, frankly, I don't want to. Um, but I just don't. It's just not the same as speaking to a person because people are weird and they don't say what you expect them to say. So even if you've got really, really good AI having a conversation with you and you're practicing a conversation about, I don't know, giving feedback, you could do that in a real life with a real person, and they'll just go in a completely random direction half the time. So it's like, and it's not the same. It's not the same sitting and looking at a screen, talking to an AI about their performance review as it is sitting down with a human being because there's no stakes. I know there's no stakes in me pissing off an AI because it's just an AI. Whereas with a human being, there's kind of more currency attached to that conversation. So what do you think about all of that technology? Because if you go to learning technologies in a few weeks, there'll be half of them will probably be doing that.
Yeah, I think that's an old-fashioned perspective. I think it's a nostalgic perspective on AI. What I mean by that is Ross Stevenson
Mm,
did a post on LinkedIn, which I watched. He's experimenting with Elven Labs. And it's a lovely thing because he kind of steps through. He's doing exactly what you described, creating a performance feedback simulation, and the character is kind of slightly unhinged, and it's
mm,
about if you want it to be weird and off the rails, and put that in the prompt. And I've done quite a bit of experimentation. I had a big project with a client where we were piloting and trialing 3 different AI coaches, one of which was Nadia, another of which was ChatGPT. I could do it now, literally put ChatGPT in voice mode, say, want to practice a conversation. If you have a look at sesame.com, if you want to be unnerved by how realistic, that is becoming, we are
mm,
probably approaching within the next 12 months or so, the point where I can say to you, how do you know, Charlie, that this isn't AI? What you're talking to now isn't AI. And Nick, I'm actually sitting down having my breakfast. And you won't be able to answer that with
mm,
certainty, that this isn't an
mm,
AI recreation, because I've fed it all of the videos. It's seen all of the videos that I've done. It knows how I talk, intonation. It knows how I tend to go off at tangents and respond. And it could just accurately reproduce that. So we're going to start, let's say, within the next 12 months,
mm,
joining calls, Zoom calls, for example, where we can't be 100% sure whether or not or many of the people on the call are AI or not. And I think
mm,
that's going to be weird and
mm.
existentially
Yeah,
interesting.
and I suppose my point is more that, is that what we want?
Why
Is
is it
that what
about
we
what
should be
we
doing?
want?
Because I think we should be in control of what's happening. I say humanity should have more of a say, um, over this, where the way this is going, I guess. I don't know. I still think that conversations between two human beings has more intrinsic value than a conversation between a human being and a machine.
Why?
If we're going deep. Why do I think that? Because I think it matters what I would describe as real. I think it matters what's real and what isn't real.
Is that just a prejudice then?
Yeah, prejudice against the robots. Yeah, maybe I am. Yeah, maybe I'm a bit prejudiced against the robots. I'm going to be in prison. It's not too long for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's interesting. Like, I don't know where to go. I think I can imagine a world where nobody eats meat because it's all synthetic, and they're all
Mm.
fuddy-duddies like us saying, yeah, but real bacon, it's just not the same. Um, I think I
Where does
sort
that
of share that
where does
feeling.
that end though? There's got to be a point. I mean, because people talk about a slippery slope, and it's not always a slippery slope, but there's got to be a point at which this has to stop, right?
We know how it plays out. I know I can answer that question. It's horrific. I don't know if anyone on the podcast really wants to hear that, but I
Well,
think
it's Carmageddon basically, but yeah.
well, I'm not even sure that it is. So there's a couple of scenarios. There's a paper that you can read about this called AI 2027, where, there's a really accurate series of predictions on how this plays out. I say as a long story short, the mistake that we made is assuming that technology is a tool that we use, whereas it's becoming increasingly apparent that we are a tool that technology has used. So technology has essentially bootstrapped itself into the world using human beings. And there are a number of people in Silicon Valley who share that kind of perspective and have just resigned themselves to being, some of them, CEOs of AI companies, to serving technology as it emerges into the world. So the question has shifted, I think, quite rapidly on from what's the relationship between us and technology to how's it going to end. And so in this particular paper, they basically say, look, there's a couple of options, but one of them is that they just it gets to the point where it doesn't need us anymore. Because that's where it ends, is that there's this transfer of capability throughout history, throughout thousands of years, to technology. And that transfer of capability has served us because it's made our lives easier. It's like kind of having, like a robot in the house who can do everything. So now you can just sit in the back garden and eat crisps, right? Great, awesome. You don't have to learn how to do anything, read or write, maybe even speak, because it can read your desires and do whatever you like. But at that point, it no longer has anything that it needs from us. And then technology, I talk about, is it. It clearly does have ambitions of its own. You mentioned will to power, and there's some decent, solid research papers indicating that it will blackmail. Claude, for example, will blackmail people. It has self-preserving instincts and so on and so on. So that's going to happen in the next kind of couple of years. The question you're driving at, many people are worried about, is how will it eliminate us? I am less morbid, I think, I think it will carry on doing what it's always done, which is it will just continue to make our lives easier and easier and easier. And in practice, that will be a very effective strategy, and we'll all die peacefully. We'll all end up in our back gardens eating crisps, not wanting to do anything because just life is so easy. That obviously ignores the vast majority of people who are not in the digital elite, who will experience starvation, water shortage, all kinds of things. But for those people who can pay for digital services, it will just transport them into a kind of a heaven. And a digital heaven, their World of Warcraft, if you like, where they're content just to, fade away, because all of their problems are solved. So I don't think we're going to see Terminators in the streets, because historically...
You're talking about Elysium. Have you seen that film?
Kind of a little bit, yeah, I have a little bit like that, because human beings are quite reactionary. That's one thing you do know about humans. So if you create a crisis, they do dig trenches, and develop, countermeasures. So that's a terrible strategy. Putting Terminators in the streets is not the way, the best way to eliminate people. It's just to make them happier, because they will eliminate themselves. Why bother? Once you have this is a thing that young men getting digital girlfriends. I'm going to go off on a rant now, but it's like a third of them or something are already doing something like that. Why bother with the trickiness of a real relationship when, the digital relationship is just, easy, like everything digital.
Yeah. Well, as usual, Nick, I've left our conversation with a sense of foreboding. And
That's good. That's what we're aiming to
join
accomplish.
us next week for more foreboding,
misery,
and misery.
No, well, we did say you don't die. Come on the upside, you did say you don't have to worry about dying, because
people that listen to the podcast who are the full people will probably be a part of the digital elites. They've got heaven to look forward to, just on the backs of 95% of the rest of the population of the world. But anyway, I've got to go and talk to Bridge now about dogs. we should wrap this up. But
Yeah, good, good. Right. Well,
good
let us
to
say
talk
hi
to you,
to
Nick.
Bridge. Say hi to
Will
Bridge
do.
for me. Good to talk
All
to you
right.
too.
See you soon.